are back with another one.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We got a superstar this time. Superstar in the house.
Don't know about that.
Well deserved.
Hey, Armin, what's your herp origin story?
Herp origin story. I've always, it's kind of, as long as I can remember, I've been interested and intrigued with reptiles. Catching them when I was a little kid, as soon as I could, grab a lizard. Watching Steve Irwin always. My parents got me. Well, when I would catch lizards or bugs, I would keep them in jars or whatever. But my parents got me my first snake for Christmas when I was 5, and then ever since then, I can't remember a time I didn't have a reptile. So whether it's through college, it got a little into the lower. I still had probably 10, but that was a low amount for me. And then it's always been reptiles my whole life. Reptiles, amphibians, and I've always been interested in fish as well, but I've kind of gone the reptile route, even though I enjoy it all. So, yeah, it's kind of everything I think about, which can be kind of annoying when trying to live a normal life and you're out with friends and you got to check Morph Market because, you got to know what's up. So, it's just kind of who I am.
It's awesome. Passion shows, man. The passion shines.
Thank you.
It's a pattern. We interview quite a few people, and some guys just have that. I shouldn't say some guys. Pretty much all of our guests have that passion in common. It's literally like you said. It's who they are. Reptiles this life is who they are. It's great for the hobby, man. It's great for innovating. It's great for the animals. It's
right. So let me ask you something. So what made you want to get into anoles primarily?
So I've always been more of like a lizard guy. I've always just found them super interesting because to me they have a lot of intelligence and personality, and I'm not one that has to like interact with my animals, so it's not like I need to have a snake around my neck all day. It's like I'm cool just watching them do their thing and setting up something cool for them. So that's kind of where the lizard thing has been interesting to me because snakes are a little more boring in that sense. Tortoises, turtles, they can have some of those characteristics, but I've always gravitated towards lizards. And Anoles have always have had an intelligence to them when you look at them, and that always has caught my attention. I've always loved monitor lizards. I love intelligence in an animal, so it's cool to look at an animal and have it look back at you versus a ball python just kind of sitting there. Even leopard geckos aren't too smart, or crested gecko, they just kind of exist. But anoles have that intelligence of like a monitor lizard in a tiny package, which I think is super cool because let's be real, reptile people are kind of hoarders. We always want more. We can never have enough. So in this room, I can have, hundreds and hundreds of baby anoles, where when I have my croc monitor's cage was bigger than this room. So it's like a give and take, and they're fun and easy to breed, and I've kept them my whole life. Since I was a little kid, I had green anoles and stuff like that, but the last 5-6 years, I started getting into more exotic, quote-unquote, species, and it's just been really cool. So that's kind of the route I've gone, and same with the micro geckos. They even smaller package, and they show that intelligence, so that's also why I like those too.
How many species do you keep altogether?
With anoles, geckos, frogs, and other lizards, definitely over 100. I don't know. It kind of
really 100 different species.
I probably should get a good count. Anoles, the most anole species I had at one time, I think, was over 40. Right now, it's probably less because there's a few one-off projects that I got rid of, but it's definitely at least 100 species, I'd say.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. How many are there? Do you for
species of anoles? It's over 400 species of anoles, not including subspecies. 400
anoles. That's amazing. They range from little guys to big old. Is a Cuban false chameleon an anole or no?
Yeah, they are technically an anole. So
That's
there's a
awesome.
huge
Great.
variety. There's tiny species that live in grass. There's like the Cuban false chameleons that are like considered twig anoles because they just live on branches and don't move for a living. They just sit there. There's bright blue anoles. There's anoles that look like leaves. There's the giant night anoles that get almost 2 feet, and then like I said, the tiny grass
Ah,
anoles. So it's a huge. It's the out of all like vertebrates, animals with bones, I think it's the largest genus of lizards or animal in general. So there's a lot of
they're
species.
they're very unique. Me and Jason watched and I'm sure you saw it yourself, but there was like a little mini documentary about the island, the anoles on the island, and how they
Mm-hmm.
adapted to urban life, like in a couple generations.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was over in Puerto Rico. They did like a study on it, or saying like comparing like the urban anoles to the ones that are out there in nature, out in the forest, and they're
Yeah.
just saying like how the urban anole is much bigger, faster, stronger, all that good stuff.
Oh,
And but they're the same
sure.
species, so
Yeah.
it's pretty
It's
cool to see how they can adapt really well.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's fun to breed them because same as that scenario, they produce really quickly and they produce a lot. So if there's like a certain line or trait you're trying to go for, it's easy to get there quick. Similar to leopard geckos, it's easy to get different um, lines and lineages going. So that's just one of the fun parts of breeding them. You have lots of babies, and you can play matchmaker, and it doesn't take 3 or 4 years like it does with snakes and other stuff.
They seem like they
So
communicate a lot. My bad, Jay. They communicate a lot.
okay.
Like just definitely a set like social structure with these things. Like they definitely communicate. So can you communally keep them, or is just some species do they vary? Do you keep them communally?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on the species. Even though they're all anoles, a lot of them have very different personalities and ways they live. But for example, like the brown anoles, everyone knows a brown anole. The ones I breed are really high red, like super bright red,
Awesome.
and those are fun to breed and keep. I keep usually like a trio or maybe a 1.3 together, and you can actually let the babies live with the adults because the adults can recognize those are baby brown anoles and not something else they want to eat.
Intelligent.
I'll throw in a cricket that's twice the size of the baby and sitting right next to the baby, and the adult will go grab the cricket and leave the baby alone. And it's really cool. They understand. Also, anoles have different. They not only do they have dewlaps that they display to communicate, but they
Mm-hmm.
also do like different tail movements and push-ups and all sorts of stuff. And there's lots of research actually they're doing on a few species where each species has its own rhythm of communication so that another species the same species understands what it's saying, and then within that same species they have a few different um, like patterns of push-ups or patterns of dewlap that means different things. So it's a much deeper communication that we don't understand yet, which is really cool for such a
Hmm.
small animal that's just doing
Yeah.
like visual communication, which is really interesting. Another reason why I think they're so cool.
Yeah. So you're talking about like how they drop eggs real quick and they produce really quick. So is that for like all your entire Anole collection? They all are pretty, even from the bigger ones to the smaller ones.
Mm-hmm. So anoles range all. We have obviously the green anole, which is the northernmost species, and then they range all the way through South America and the Caribbean and stuff like that. So throughout that whole range, of course, we have species from the Caribbean, which are a lot hotter, more wet areas. And then in South America, there's Amazon, the jungle, but there's also really high elevation species too. Species like in the Caribbean and in the Amazon and stuff, they're producing like an egg a week usually. Versus, of course, there's species that are living in more cloud forest areas, like even where like a Abronia might live and stuff like that, where it's, 60s during the day, dipping down into the 40s. Those species lay a lot less just because it takes a lot more energy and they don't have as much heat and sun to do that. But most of the species I have are Caribbean species. So they're really high metabolism, really fast rate of laying eggs. So, like I said, they can lay an egg a week during the peak breeding season. And if I left them at like full on, the temperatures right now, they could breed year round. But I try to give them a break because the females live longer and do better with a break. Even though sometimes in the wild they don't get that break, it's always warm there. They're always going. They do slow down a little in the winter seasons, but it really never stops.
So, for all your notes, so is it like for your collection, right? Do you pretty much have everything like is it all streamlined, or do you have to make little tweaks here and there for each species that you do have?
Most of what I've got going now, I've streamlined to the point where no matter the species, most of the species I keep, it's all the same care. So they're all on the same
Okay.
misting system, all feeding the same thing, all kind of set up the same, same temperature, same like in this room. This is where I keep the babies. I have each cage has a different species, so I have like 40 species of babies, and I'm keeping them all the exact same way. So that's kind of where of course, there's other species that require different care, and I have a few of those which are in different areas of the building. But for the most part, I've tried to keep it all similar so that it's not when you're taking care of 10 different things, it becomes a lot more time consuming than just something repetitive that I'm doing 200 times. I
Yeah.
just muscle memory, keep doing the same thing, and it makes it easier to keep up.
Yeah. Now, was that like a business decision right there that you decided to kind of do that instead of
Yeah,
kind of say, I
because
want to try this, that,
before
and
this,
this?
I had the Anoles, I had all sorts of different monitors, I had different types of skinks, I had different types of this and that, and you just get spread pretty thin. So, because
Yeah.
everything, when you have to mix Pangea for your Chihuahua gecko collection, and then you got to go feed the crickets, and then you got to go defrost the mice, and then you have to do this and that, and then you got to clean the monitor water every day, and you got to do it's like you get behind, especially when it's one person. So this way, it's like
Yeah.
I said, open the cage, throw the crickets, open the cage, throw the crickets, mist, clean this day. It's like just muscle memory, the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I've gone. And same with the micro geckos, I do those too. They come from the Caribbean as well, which a lot of my anoles do. So it's the same, almost same exact care, and it just has made it a lot easier. Of course, I still have other
Okay.
stuff that isn't like this, but this is, one half is like this, and the other half is another way, so I can really divvy it up and keep the flow going.
Gotcha.
Very cool. How
So,
many species I don't want to get right into the geckos, but how many species of micro geckos do you keep?
I would say probably close to 20.
Really?
Yeah. And
All
yeah.
Caribbean?
Yeah, for
All
the most
Caribbean
part.
species?
Yes. So genuses are Spherodactylus and then Gonatodes. Those are the
Okay.
two main types of microgeckos I keep. So,
Very
and
cool.
in those genuses, obviously, there's other species, but yeah.
Hmm. And can you keep them communally? Do you keep them in little like social
So
groups or?
those work similar way to the anoles. Those can only be kept in 1.1 pairs because males
Okay.
are territorial with males and females are territorial with females. You can let the eggs hatch in
Oh,
the enclosure and the parents won't hurt babies. But once
so cool.
babies start to become sexually mature, then it's time to remove them and pair them on their own, or they can live on their own, no problem. But with those, it has to be 1.1 pairs because interestingly, interestingly enough, they are territorial towards their own sex. So even females are territorial towards other females, which is very unusual. But they're probably more territorial than males. It's kind of crazy. I've tried and it never works. One gets beat up really quick, and it's like, yeah, that wasn't a good idea. I should have listened to the OGs because you think you know better. Sometimes it's like, nah, there's a reason why everyone says that. So yeah, that's they're really cool too, and just as intelligent. They're generally more shy than the Anoles, but they're just really fun, and I appreciate how cool they are.
yeah. What was I about to say? So with so how or when do you actually remove the babies from the enclosure then for the micros?
Yeah, so
Or
I'm
how long do you let them stay in?
usually not leaving eggs. You can, but I'm usually collecting them and hatching them just because that's kind of
Okay.
what I'm doing.
Higher success.
I'm breeding. Yeah, I'm breeding to, produce and sell and keep and then hold back
Gotcha.
stuff and keep
Yeah,
it
yeah.
going. If you leave them in the enclosure, there's always the chance you miss the spot where the eggs are and they go bad, or they get too dry, they go bad, So
Gotcha. Okay.
I try to remove them, but yeah. I have had it where I didn't find an egg and I left it and I found the baby and then just leave it there and they do well until they get to once you can start to tell they're male or female. A lot of them are sexually dimorphic, so males and females will have different patterns or whatever.
Okay.
That's when you can start to see the differences when you want to remove them.
Being that they're sexually dimorphic and you breed them to sell and you sell lots of them, do you find it harder to sell like females? With like a bigger gecko, a chihuahua, they only buy one. With these smaller geckos, how do you market them? How do people?
Usually I sell them unsexed. Usually I usually am selling the babies before they're sexable, and I usually will give like a deal on like multiple, like if you buy 5 I'll knock off a percentage or something. So a lot of most of the people that are interested, well, the geckos, the anoles, anyone buying anoles, 90% of them are trying to breed and like have intentions of breeding because it's very niche reptile person type thing. The micro geckos are a little different, where it is very niche, like reptile person, but there's also like the people who think they're really cute. So that's when I'll sell the one-off. Right? The one-off, like they just want one. But usually when I'm majority of the sales are people buying multiple and they want to, increase their odds of getting a pair or 2 pairs. Sense. Yeah, so that's awesome.
So you're doing crazy things with those red ones, man. Is that a mutation or is that a species? The red anoles you're breeding.
Those are brown anoles. So those are brown anoles. It's not like a mutation. Well, it's I don't know the real science behind it. It's some type of, because I'll get super red ones that there's wild caught populations in Florida, basically. And I'll get super duper red ones and breed them together, and the babies pop out red, but not anywhere near close to parents. But then there's others that you combine them, and then the babies are nicer than the parents. So it's just a lot of figuring out that I haven't figured out. But I have lots of pairs of those, and I produce a lot of them. And yeah, those are definitely crazy. There's
You'll be the one to figure it out then. I mean,
well, I can't take much credit. They've been around before me, so friend. Yeah, I have a friend. His name's James Lindros. He breeds a lot of the microgeckos, and he also bred the red anoles. So he has a lineage that he's been working on for probably 5 or 6 years, and his are super red. And then I've plugged in some of my own that I've gotten wild caughts from Florida and started my own and then crossing them. And we're all still trying to figure out how it works, because maybe 1 in 5 or 6 babies is like super crazy red, and the rest still have some red, but it's just like. And even when you breed the crazy red ones together, you don't always get the crazy red. So, yeah, it's definitely.
Are there any true mutations in anoles?
Yeah, so there's one. Well, I mean, in the night anoles, there's albinos and stuff like that. And then some of the smaller species I have, we call it translucent. It's actually in a few species like brown anoles. I have one species, the Guadalupe anole, Anoles marmoratus, and then it's also in the Antigua bank anole, which is Anoles pogus. It's like a translucent morph that's popped up in all 3 of them, that the skin is like almost see-through and they have very little coloration. So that's pretty cool. There's all sorts of stuff that pops up, but at the end of the day, unless like me or someone who really is into it cares, it would never go anywhere, because once once you produce so many of something, if it doesn't go to the right people and they keep it going, there's no future for it. So I'm sure there's been lots of cool stuff, but it all has come and gone. But the albino night anoles are pretty impressive. Those are pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you went to South America, right?
Yes, I've been to Ecuador.
Oh, so like, what did you take from that, and how did you add those kind of experiences being over there to all your anoles and your micro geckos?
Yeah. So Ecuador was really cool. Spent like 10 days there, just in different parts of the, like 3 or 4 different parts of the jungle. One of the coolest places I went was Mindo, which is like cloud forest area. And that's where I was talking about some of those cloud forest species of anoles that don't produce a lot. There's one that's called Anoles proboscis, which has like a huge long Pinocchio nose, and that was really incredible.
Nice.
Um, that's just one of my favorite moments. But I think the way I've applied it in my own keeping um, is that you don't realize how much plants, plant life and stuff is there, and how little animal life is there compared to the plants. It's just you can like during the day you can walk for hours and not see an animal besides a few bugs. At night it's a lot different because a lot of like the lizards and stuff are sleeping, some snakes are out, bugs are out, frogs are out. But at the same time it's like you have this huge entire crazy jungle, and every 15-20 minutes you find something. So it's a lot less dense than, well, and it's also different because that's the jungle, and then a lot of these are island species, so it's a lot more dense on islands. But I also didn't realize how it was there. You walk through the rainforest and it's like you're walking on a sponge, and just water comes up, and if you're not wearing like rain boots the whole time, you're screwed. So that changed the way I thought about keeping a lot of the more rainforest types, the Amazonian species I have.
Okay.
And it's just you think it's a lot warmer. Well, it depends. Some places were way warmer than I thought they'd be, and some places were way cooler than I thought they'd be. Like some parts of the Amazon, you're like, you want a coat. You wouldn't think the Amazon will get down into the 60s, versus other parts, it was like grueling 90 degrees. And it's like, how did these, if I left my reptile room this way, I think everything would die, but obviously nothing does. So obviously they're finding cooler spots, but it still just gives you an idea how diverse the animals have to be able to live in these situations. We
Oh
pamper
yeah.
our animals so much, the wild doesn't, and they still have been around this whole time. So
Yeah.
that's like when people, freak out about how you take care of a crested gecko. It's like, well, they come from an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's not perfect like your reptile room at 78 degrees or 74 degrees all day. It's like very up and down. But that's
Yeah.
kind of the perspective I've got. I've done a lot of herping, in Southern California and other parts of the US. So I've always known that, but actually going to a more tropical place like that really like solidified that for me.
Yeah.
Great, man. That's super cool, man. There's nothing like, I mean, keeping a species and going to its native land to just
Yeah.
learn and see. I mean, that's a knowledge that, most people never have, man. That's so valuable. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
And since I keep a lot of the Caribbean species, I've been to like different parts of Mexico and stuff, but I'm headed to Puerto Rico in like a few months to really see how that
There you
is. So
go.
a lot of the stuff I have is from there, so it'll be cool to actually
Oh
see
yeah.
it in person and kind of
That's
get
really
a feel
dope.
for how they really live. So
Super cool.
that'll be fun. Yeah.
So when you go on these little excursions, or do you have somebody that just comes over and does all your chores for you while you're gone?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a few good friends that just come and kind of I set it up so that they only have to come and make sure nothing's on fire, basically. And then if I'm gone for like a 10-day thing, I'll make sure there's enough crickets or whatever for them to feed. And I color code everything so that they can this the pink gets this size cricket, the blue gets that size cricket. How many dots there are is how many lizards, so that's how many the amount of crickets they get. So it's definitely I try to make it foolproof. Of course, nothing ever goes perfect. Whenever I go on a trip, I expect something to go wrong, but I try to mitigate it. And of course, that's just how it is when you leave with the animals in a collection. So if anything goes wrong, it's usually no one's fault. It's just kind of the nature of the game. No one's gonna know your collection like you do, and no one's gonna take
Of
care of it
course.
like you do. But I have some good friends that definitely do their best. So puts me a little bit at ease. I mean, I had since Ecuador, I haven't really gone. That was 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, actually. Since then, I haven't really gone on a trip longer than like 3 or 4 days. So my next trip to Puerto Rico will be the longest trip I've taken in like almost 3 years. So that's I'd try to avoid it, but at some point it's like, well, I have to enjoy life a little, and
Yeah, exactly. You can't
it'll be a
just
herping
let the
trip
animals hold you down.
that way. So
Yeah. So, you got any cool little stories though from your Ecuador trip? Anything crazy happened while you were there, or like just out of the blue something?
anything crazy from Ecuador? I don't know. I think just the cloud forest was really cool to me because it was such a diverse. There, it gets technical. If you don't know what they look like, you definitely got to look them up. But there's Anoles fraseri, which is like this giant, almost 2 foot anole. They call it the hippie anole that has like red and purple and pink on it, but it's a bright like lime green lizard with those colors all over it. Finding those was incredible because and you're looking for anoles at night. During the day, you'll never see them in the jungle. So at night they're sleeping, and they usually sleep out on the ends of branches or on leaves, because if like a snake comes up, they can feel it coming and then they can jump off. So finding those along with Anoles equatoralis, which is a more drab anole, but it has probably one of the biggest dewlaps ever, like bigger than its body. And then Anoles gemosis, it's called gemosis because it looks like white gems all over it. And then, of course, the proboscis anole, which is the Pinocchio anole. We found all four. Those are like the big ones. So, and it's cool to find anoles, which you think is a tropical animal, and you're wearing a jacket because it's 50 degrees and and it's foggy. You can't see more than 100 feet in front of you because you're in the clouds. So that was really cool. And then we were there for one night, and then we went back down into the Amazon, and it was again 80, 85 degrees, 100% humidity, and honestly terrible. But it was just cool that was probably my favorite part. I definitely want to go back to Mindo and spend a few days there just in the cloud forest seeing lizards again.
Did you find any species or come across any species that you weren't looking for?
Yeah, there were tons of species of snakes and frogs and stuff that we weren't intending to find, but we did. It's like really cool black-eyed tree frogs, different types of tree boas, all sorts of stuff. We found it's a genus of lizard. It almost looks like a Chinese water dragon, but it's from South America. It's called Anuloides. They're really cool. They're called a dwarf. Like the general name is dwarf iguana. So those were really incredible to find. I mean, you never know what you're gonna find. So it was cool to find stuff that you didn't even know existed.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. They still discover things all the time out there. Things that aren't known.
We were there when they found a new species of frog like the week we were there, and we drove past the mountain. They found it. So it's all sorts of stuff. Like the guy, we went with a guide, and he's collected like probably 20 species that he described. So it's just you never know what you're going to find out there. Of course, they're all little frogs and little stuff that a lot of people don't pay attention to, but it's still pretty incredible. There's stuff that we haven't described yet still out there, which you don't think that it's out there.
Not to get into it, but even with botany, there's so many plants out there that aren't known to science. I mean, it's as much as we think we know, we don't know anything. That cloud forest is a holy grail of science, if you will. It's just like, wow. It's incredible that you got to go there and see that, man. That's super cool, man.
Yeah, I'm definitely thankful I was able to.
So before we start hitting some of these micro geckos, let me ask you something. If someone wanted to get a Anole, what would your recommendation be for like a first time Anole?
First time, really, a lot of the ones I keep are good. The red brown Anole is easy just because brown Anoles are like probably one of the hardiest lizards you could ever keep. There's other ones like the Guadalupe anole I mentioned earlier, Anoles marmoratus. They're very similar care and personality to the brown anole. And those are cool. They have a bright green body with a orange yellow head. And basically all you're gonna do is set up a terrarium. You can go as big as you want. They're not a species that needs more confined spaces to find their stuff. Once the lizard is not a baby anymore, it's a juvenile or larger, you can give them as much space as you want and they will do fine. So something like 12 by 12 by 18 or bigger is good. And then just ambience around 80 degrees, and then you can give them a hot spot like 90 or above. And then misted once or twice a day, feed insects, and that's about it. You can go as fancy as you want, huge, crazy bioactive, or you can keep it simple like all my babies I'm just keeping on, like dirt and sticks. So it can be simple, it can be extravagant. They really do well no matter what. And you don't have to worry about keeping a lot of people get worried, oh, my lizard's going to be lonely. No, it's fine on its own. Or if you want to get a pair, you can get a pair, no problem, but expect some babies because they do breed. As long as they're being kept relatively correct, they will breed. You can, of course, keep females together of anoles, and usually they get along. So that's a good option if you want multiple and don't want babies. And yeah, that's a very general overview of care, but most of the species, that's how I'm keeping all my stuff you see here, and they all do really well. So that's.
Is UVB optional, or do you think that it plays a significant role in the health of?
I give all my lizards UVB, but I've experimented with raising babies without and with, and I honestly haven't seen a difference. Sure. So, of course, everyone's going to tell you they need UVB, and I would definitely recommend give it. There's no reason not to give it. But in a pinch, if your bulb is out, blah, 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 it's not like they're going to drop dead in a day. So I'm still looking into it. Of course, a lot of these species are from the Caribbean. The UV index is 12 for most of the day, so they're getting UV. But I'm seeing how much they need it. There's not really any solid research on that, so obviously I'm not a scientist or anything. I'm just doing it for my personal interest to see how it affects them. But
Very cool.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend giving them UV, no doubt.
Okay.
I said I've also seen people give their Anoles Pangea or like crested gecko diet. Is that something that they do as well? Or
some species will definitely eat it.
Okay.
Sometimes brown anoles will eat it, not always. But there are species like green anoles, Cuban night anoles. They will always eat it. They don't need it they could live off of insects their whole life, but you can definitely give it to them, and they will eat it. So a lot of it depends on the species and sometimes on the lizard individual personality. But if someone has an anole and they want to try it, go for it.
Yeah, just a little treat or something. It doesn't have to be a main part of the rotation or anything like that, right? Okay. So micro geckos, right? So you said you do Sparodactylus and Gonotodes?
Yes.
Which in those genuses, which species are you working with on those?
Well, Sparodactylus off the top of my head. I have Macrolepis. Shoot, they just changed the name. Not Guarnex. Grandisquamus. I have Sputator. I have Alphys Rosarae. Ocujole, Elegans, Argus, Notatus. There's more, but they're not coming to mind. So those are just a few that I can name off the top of my head.
The only one I knew was the Elegans.
Yeah.
That's the ashy reef gecko, right?
Yes, ashy gecko.
Okay, all right, yeah. So with those...
Don't they? They're like kind of invasive, the reef geckos down...
So technically they're non-native. They're from Cuba. So there's 3 species in Florida. There's Elegans, which is the ashy gecko, Argus, which is ocellated gecko, and then Notatus, which is the reef gecko. Technically, it's debated whether the reef gecko is native or not to Florida. There's populations that have washed up from the Bahamas, which genetically, based on the DNA, there are differences in the ones from the Bahamas and the ones from Florida, and then they found ones with similar genetics to Bahamas that are living in Florida in different parts than the Florida localities. Anyway, so it's debated if the Notatus, the reef geckos, are native or not to Florida, but the Ashies and the Argus are from Cuba, and they're not. They have washed up. It's not human introduction. It's they've washed up from hurricanes and all the other debris they floated over to the Keys, and they're not. They don't consider them invasive, but they're non-native. They're not invasive because they have no ecological impact. They just live in the leaf litter and don't really affect anything. So, but they are non-native, and they but they just I think they passed a law in Florida starting January 1st. The reef gecko, Sphaerodactylus notatus, will be protected there. So you can't collect them, you can't keep them
Awesome.
in Florida. So yeah.
Good for them. Good for them. That's super.
Which it's kind of it's up for the thing is no one knows if it's a good thing because technically Florida has always stood by the notion that reef geckos aren't native, but now all of a sudden they protected them. So it's kind of like, are they protecting a non-native species? And if they are protecting a non-native species, how can they use that in the future to stop people from keeping other non-native species? So it's good and bad because it's good for the geckos, but it's bad because the government could use it in a weird way because it's a weird precedent.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are the geckos from Florida, and I keep all three because they're all really cool.
Nice.
Awesome.
So if you're going to, how would you set these things up?
So basically, it's the same temperatures requirements as the anoles because the anoles are just living a little higher up. These are mostly living on the ground in leaf litter and stuff. So you're just going to set up like an 8x8 cube or larger. You can go larger again once these geckos are past baby stage. They're good at finding food and all that stuff, so you don't need to like keep them in something tiny. But an 8x8 or larger, which already isn't very big, and then you just want a few things for climbing because they will use stuff to climb, even though not all the time. Maybe a piece of cork bark or something, and some leaf litter because that's where they're going to mainly be doing their thing, and then a plant or two, and I recommend like a half soil, half sand substrate. And I mist usually every other day because they do well with, a little period of drying out. And I feed on the days that I don't mist. And depending on the size of the gecko, you can feed small fruit flies, you can feed pinhead crickets or 1 week crickets. And then as they mature, they're big enough to eat like a 2-week-old cricket, which is like a 1/4 inch or like the average small cricket you'd get at Petco or PetSmart. So. And of course, you can feed them different things like bean beetles and different small isopods and stuff like that. But crickets are easiest for me, so that's kind of the main staple I do with them.
So are they?
Sorry.
Being that you use so many bugs, are you raising your own feeders or are you buying them?
So stuff like bean beetles and fruit flies, I do myself, but mainly I'm feeding crickets, which I buy every week. I get a new batch of crickets, so which sucks. I'm trying to move into being able to produce my own bugs, but then is it that cost effective when I have to spend a whole nother day taking care of bugs? So it's like give and take. I don't know what's better, spending $300 a week on crickets or spending a day of the week taking care of bugs.
So how many crickets are you getting per week?
What makes the most sense? Like the bean beetles are so easy because they do it themselves, and every month I make out of one culture I can make 4 more. So that takes me an hour once a month. But then stuff like fruit flies, nightmare. Stuff like trying to breed crickets, nightmare. Roaches, I'm on the edge of fence about just because it's like they work well and they're not that hard, but it's labor and it's not always ideal because I have soil in all my enclosures and the roaches will dig into the soil and then never be found until they're huge. So it's just I buy mostly crickets just because that's been easiest.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
But I do
Yeah.
toil with that a lot if I'm gonna try to produce my own feeders, or I always try and then I end up buying crickets again.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, with that huge collection, that's one more extra thing that you got to do. That's taking
Yeah.
up time out of your day, which you could be doing something else, right?
Right.
So how many crickets do you get in per week when you're ordering
It's about like 25,000 a week.
them? Ooh,
Yeah.
That's
man, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
So the thing is, majority of them are small, like 1 week and 2 week
Yeah,
cricket for baby anoles, baby geckos, and then adult micro geckos. The adult anoles will eat anywhere from a 3 to 4 week cricket, which it's frustrating because the 1 week cricket, which is the size of a you know tiny. I don't even know what it did. Like not a grain of sand, but almost a pinhead size is the same size as
yeah.
a 5 week old cricket, or same price as a 5 week old cricket, which is
Oof,
obviously so much more to rate. So
yeah.
that's where I'm trying to figure out how to feed all the babies a little more cost effectively. Um, but still haven't figured it out because I find especially for the anoles, they grow a lot better when feeding them crickets than fruit flies. I
Mhm.
found fruit flies just don't, whether it's the media the fruit flies are eating, because I gut load all the crickets before I feed them. So I don't know what the nutritional difference is, but the anoles just don't grow as well on the fruit flies. So
Yeah.
I've been forced to
Well, I
buy.
mean, like the fruit flies, that media is what, like mashed potato
Yeah,
flakes or something like that, and yeah, so it's not like highly nutritious.
right,
So
exactly. So
I can understand
that's
that.
what you end up giving your baby lizards for them to become a full grown lizard, which it doesn't always work. The crickets seem when I gut load them with like different greens and different. I'll give them different like proteins, like
Yeah,
different types of turtle or fish food, and then also potatoes. So it's like there's a good variety in there.
yeah.
I don't know. It's also probably just the makeup of the cricket has some more sustenance than the fruit fly.
I mean,
But
crickets themselves, I mean, they're used for human consumption. I mean, in the
right,
fitness world, there's like really some like, vegan guys that use cricket protein powder. And I mean, it's something outrageous, like 21 grams of protein for a two tablespoon scoop. So, I mean, they make the cricket protein flour. I mean, crickets in general are just, by nature, a nutritional food source, you know?
yeah,
I mean, I noticed even with my collection and stuff, feed them mealworms versus feed them crickets. One, the crickets bring out a different side of them. It's
right,
so mentally stimulating for them to hunt and the movement. And then whatever nutritionally, I mean, you literally give them a couple feedings of crickets and you'll notice how much bigger the animal got, how much fuller the animal is. They suck. I hate to say it, man. They get out like these crickets play gymnast when I open the box. Like they do things I didn't think it was possible to do. But man, they're hard to beat as a food source,
yeah,
man.
yeah. And
Yeah,
I've found that out too. I think the animals, like you said, they look fuller. Just they fill out better. It looks like they're more hydrated. I think the crickets are able to carry more, water than other types. So it's definitely a noticeable difference. And I haven't found something that really works better yet. So and yeah, they do suck.
yeah,
They smell and they're loud and just gross. But it
yeah.
is what
Especially
it
when
is.
they get out, they
Yeah,
just feel like once they're out, they feel like they have to scream or have to chirp at the top of their like the highest
exactly.
it can go, and you can't find them. Like when they escape from my room, I'm like, holy shit, and they just want to go at the loudest pitch point they can. Not, I literally have to leave my room and just go sleep on the couch for the night
Yeah,
because it's like I can't find you, so I'm going out there because you won this battle. Because I'm not gonna be up all night trying to find some crickets.
yeah, terrible.
Like that's why I literally have a bunch of like Mediterranean geckos that I just collected and just put in my apartment. Just so like if I get any loose crickets, like a loose dubia or something, it's gonna be gone.
Yeah,
Like I don't have a problem with that. Just that initial chirping. I'm like, good lord. And then on top of that, like once those crickets chirp, so my Certodactylus, they they chirp like birds, and
mhm.
it is incredibly loud. And so them and the crickets are like just battling out who can be the loudest on some nights. It's crazy.
With so many animals down there, Harmon, have you ever lost an animal? Have you ever had an anole or a gecko jump and get out on you?
Oh, never, of course, definitely. All
I'm
the
looking
time.
at your setup. That would be hell to get one out of there somewhere.
Well, the way this is set up, if they get out of one of these cages, they usually drop to the ground and there's nothing on the ground. So they usually just run into the
Oh yeah,
wall and then I can
baseboard.
grab them.
Oh,
So
that's a beautiful baseboard. That black is baseboard.
yeah. So they
Oh,
don't,
okay.
when they're on the ground, they can climb the wall, but they're not really good at climbing it like in a rush. So when they jump down, and I know it's like easy to grab them and stuff, it's when
Yeah.
there's other rooms that when I have like a rack on the ground or something and they can get under it, that's when it's a nightmare. But a lot of the time, the anoles, it's funny because in the same day or by the next day, they're back like on top of the cage that they live in, trying to get in because they're used to it. It's like
I've
they
heard
always
this.
get back to where they want it, like where they were, because it's like their spot. So usually nothing's out for very long because I can they make themselves known because they're not a type of lizard. Anoles aren't the lizard that's gonna go hide under a box for a year. They're a lizard that's always out in the open, always trying to see what's going on. So they're always going to be on top of a lie or somewhere where I can see them. So nothing ever is gone for very long. I don't usually have to worry about it. If they do get out, it's a pain, but it's like they'll pop back up. So
Nice. So for the Anoles and micro geckos, right? Well, for Anoles, where do they deposit their eggs in your enclosures? Because your enclosure is pretty much like all sphagnum moss, right?
well, so I used to do it that way with all sphagnum and then like a potted plant and they'd lay in the pot. I still do that with some of them, but now I just kind of went because I would dig up the pot and then the plant after a few times of digging it up wouldn't do good anymore, obviously, because I'm ruining the roots every time. So
Yeah.
now I've just kind of made the whole bottom soil and then they'll usually lay
Okay.
at the base of like a stick or something. And once
Okay.
they choose where they like to lay, they'll keep laying there. So at some point, it's like I just know where to go to find the eggs in each cage. So that's just kind of
Okay.
how I've been doing it now.
How
I
many?
can't decide whether I like all soil and no pot or a pot more. The pot's easy because I can just take it out and dump it out and find the eggs. But at the same time, it's sometimes they won't lay it if they're stubborn and they don't want to lay in the pot and they lay somewhere else that doesn't have enough humidity and the eggs have gone bad and you lose them. So this way, it's like
Yeah.
the eggs never really go bad because all the soil is moist enough, but then it takes a little
Yeah.
more time to dig through.
How many inches of soil are you giving them for that?
Usually for the adults, I'm giving them like an inch and a half, 2 inches, nothing super deep. But
Okay,
like
so
for
they're
example,
not real big time diggers. Or
no, I mean they can in like when
okay.
I do them in a 6 inch pot. The pot is 6 inches deep as well, and sometimes I'd find a tiny anole that's only a few inches can dig a hole all the way to the bottom and lay its eggs all the way in the
Okay.
bottom. It's
I saw the
kind of
video you
crazy.
posted all the way at the bottom of that flower pot.
Yeah, so it can definitely they can dig and dig, but if they have no choice, they don't always go super deep. So that's kind of the give
Okay.
and take of what I'm I'm still experimenting with it all. No one's ever gone this like in depth in trying to breed anoles. Everyone's always done it like hobby level, just a few pairs here, a
Yeah.
few pairs there. So doing it at this level is like still a huge experiment. I'm still learning. I'm still switching things up. I'm switching things and being like, oh, that's better. Switching things. Let me go back to the original way. It was better that way. So it's all just a learning curve. So I'm still figuring it out for sure.
That's
How
good.
often do they lay? I don't think we talked about, but how often do the geckos versus the anoles, are they similar, and how big are the clutches? Are the anoles even laying two egg clutches in every 30 days, or?
So the anoles are laying one egg every like about 7 days. It could be six, it could be
Wow.
8. Yeah, so one egg at a time. So in a month you can get, 4 or 5, sometimes 6 eggs from one female. It can be crazy. And then the micro geckos, they're laying one egg at a time, but they're a much slower pace. They're every like maybe 3.5, 4 weeks, one egg at a time.
Okay.
And they take a lot more. It The eggs are so huge that the micro geckos lay. that it takes them a lot more energy and a lot more time to develop that egg. Also, the microgecko eggs are hard shelled, so they don't expand in size. Versus the anole eggs, they're laid tiny and they absorb so much water. They're like 5-6 times bigger than when they were originally laid by the time they hatch. So that's the anoles can just pump them out, and a lot of the work is done outside of the female, like absorbing water and stuff. Versus the microgeckos, it all has to be in that one package, ready to go.
Okay.
And
Very interesting.
the microgecko eggs are basically as big as the anole eggs when the anole eggs are first laid for the smaller species of anoles. So, and then the microgeckos come out when they hatch. They come out, obviously they're tiny, but they come out huge compared to the adults. So, if an adult is 2 inches, the baby will come out at like half an inch, which is pretty large.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Nice.
Very cool.
And I mean, micro geckos, are they burying their eggs, or are they just kind of lay them under a leaf litter, and that's it?
They lay them under leaf litter, like kind of half buried. Sometimes they'll lay them in like the holes of cork bark. They just kind of find nooks and crannies to lay them. Sometimes they'll lay them in between leaves in leaf litter if there's like a good pocket. They're
okay.
They kind of just wherever they think is safe, but they don't really bury them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What are the incubation times, guys?
So the anoles, it can vary depending on species and temperatures. Anole eggs have hatched anywhere from 70 degrees to 90 degrees. And I have a friend who breeds them in Florida. He breeds them outside in screen cages, and they lay eggs in pots in the enclosure, and he lets them hatch out in the pots. And he's temp gunned the black pots, and black pots are 140 degrees, and the eggs are right in there. So it's like the anole eggs, there's no limit to, they're basically indestructible. So depending on the temperatures and the species, it can be anywhere from 30 to like 60 days. The average is more like 35, 45 days. And then the microgeckos are going to be like 45, 60 days also. So.
Cool. Nice. And what temperatures are you running on those?
Probably similar, just ambient. Like, right? Yeah, yes. Like mid 80s is usually what I'm incubating that stuff at. I incubate everything around like 82 to 84. Just keep it consistent, but that's
and they're not
they all do good.
Not temp sex, right?
Right. No, well, there's debate whether it is, and I have some friends that think they are. I have friends who think they aren't. Every time I'm like trying to figure it out, I never keep good enough track. So it's I don't think so, but I think temperature has something to play, but it's not like turtles where it's like for sure one way or the other. It's something I don't know enough about to say for sure, but I think temperature does play a small factor. And each species, it's not like all anoles, this temperature is male, this temperature is female. It's I think each species is different. Like warmer for some species, you get more males. Warmer for some species, you get more females. So I just have so much going on that every time I go to I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. I've literally built separate incubators to incubate at different temperatures, and then I just end up not doing a good job of keeping track. So
hey, you got a lot on your plate, man. God bless. That's awesome, dude. You know, it's something you'll get. It's even cooler that it's still to be determined, you know, knowing that these species, all these unknowns with these species, I mean, that shit's like, that's super alluring to the hobby, you know, like a lot of people should check these things out, man, and want to work with these things, man. There's a lot of stuff to be done still with these anoles, man. That's super cool, man. You know, like everybody has a chance of discovering something, if you will, you know, work hard enough, pay attention.
That's one of the fun things for me because I'm learning along the way. And then I have friends who are learning along the way with me. They'll give me advice. They found something out. I use it. It works. I give them something I found out. It's kind of what makes it's what the hobby is all about, you know? We forget that crested geckos were basically rediscovered 30 years ago and no one knew what was going on with them. And now, of course, you feed it, you know, one drop too much of this or missed it too much or the temperature's off by 1 degree. Everyone freaks out on you on Facebook. So it's like, this is back the OG way of, you know, trial and error and figuring out new stuff. It's pretty fun. So I enjoy it in that sense, and being able to talk to people and who have the same interest, just because, I mean, for me, this has monetary value because I've been able to make it work. But most people that are doing this type of stuff, it's just because they love it. So that's always fun to talk
Yeah.
to people who have that same kind of just drive to do it because they like it. So that's versus so many other niches and parts of the hobby have become so um, money driven that the fun
Yeah.
gets sucked out of it.
Like I said, I'm about to be on that journey as well with my Certodactylus. Said there's not a lot of
Yeah,
information on
that's a
them,
cool
so I'm
genus for
kind of
sure.
yeah. Like I said, I keep telling everybody, I was like, there's over 300 species of Certodactylus, and yet we only get a few of them in the hobby. So that's my whole goal is just to uh, get as much information as I can and
Yeah,
just share it with the world. Hopefully, I mean that ride takes me somewhere fruitful.
yeah,
So with your I said you do this full time, right?
yeah. I do.
Yeah. So what's kind of like your daily routine with this stuff? This is being like your full time job.
Yeah, so it depends on the day, but daily routine is usually I have misting systems, but I've kind of been going back to hand misting just because with this many nozzles, it's become kind of like not working as well. Some parts get more
Hmm.
flooded, some parts don't get enough. So especially with the babies, they really need that water, but it can't get too wet for them. So I've been hand misting every day. I'll go through. I feed every other day, so on the days I'm feeding, it's usually mist, feed. By that time, that's about 3 or 4 hours, and then after that, those are the priorities. I try to update my morph market once a week, so I'll go through, take new pictures, do that. Meanwhile, I'm replying to morph market messages the whole day because it's on my phone, so it's easy to do that. Um,
Yeah.
and then just constant cleaning, constant setting new stuff up. I obviously breed tons and tons of lizards, but I also get stuff from other breeders to kind of supplement what I'm doing. So I'll sell other people's animals. So I have a whole quarantine area where I set those stuff up. I'm always getting new stuff. I do exporting out of the country for people who buy like Hong Kong and Germany, and I send animals there. So I have animals I'm constantly picking up and sending out, going to the airport. So I'm obviously doing my social media too, which that's also supplemental income. That's one of the ways I can keep this all afloat. So um, it's just a constant, like every day is different, but the constant is misting and feeding, misting and feeding. That's always happening.
Yeah.
So other than that, it's every day is different. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's net.
Are
It's
you a
Go ahead.
I was like, are you a show guy besides doing the ones in California?
Last year, I was doing a lot of shows. Like I literally got a van. I was going to a show every few weeks out of state, but
Okay.
I came to the realization with my niche of animals and what I'm doing. Yes, I make money at the shows, and they're technically worth my while. But with the amount of time I have to leave and the energy and getting everything set back up, and a lot of this stuff is more sensitive. It doesn't always pan out to do the shows. So I've kind of just been
Yeah.
sticking to the more local ones, which we still have them.
Okay.
We still have 6 or 7 around here that I do per year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I've stuck to the more local ones this last year, just because
Cool.
it was super draining to keep traveling and
Oh, I
getting
bet.
stuff back up and having someone else take care of my stuff and stuff going wrong. So just kind of
You've built
decided
such
to
a huge
lay back
brand.
a little. Sorry.
You've built such a huge brand, dude, that it almost you don't. I hate to say
Right.
it, but you don't have to go to shows like your
Right.
HerpTime, dude. Like people just order. I mean, you are a reptile show.
Right.
It's like your social media, your morph market. I mean, you have literally made this brand, man, and it's super unique in the hobby. I mean, you only see so many guys. Canova, you. I mean, there's not a lot of people that have this this type of following slash everything you do. I mean, it's a total package, you know. I mean, you don't have to go to show, you know.
Right.
If it was something you want to do, that's awesome. It's cool, but with all your social media, it's like people know you from watching you. You know, it's like it's actually brilliant. You know, whether it was intentional or it's not. I mean, it's better for your animals, better for your pocket. I mean, it's
Yeah. No,
hey,
I
why go to the show?
I'm selling. I stuff always sells regardless if I go to a show or not. So I figured just post on Morph Market and
Mm-hmm.
save everyone the stress, you know. So that's kind of the
Absolutely.
route I'm taking, and it's
Save some
proven to
gas.
be better for me and the animals. So I'm happy with that,
Yeah.
Makes
and I'm very
perfect sense.
thankful that, yeah, people have definitely been supportive of everything I'm doing. So that helps a lot, and it's cool to. I also
Deserve it.
I take a lot of effort to reply to people and help people out, even if they never bought anything from me. I'm happy to. A kid has a green anole and he messaged me on Instagram how to take care of it. I'll do my best to. I've had long conversations with people that I've never heard from again how to take care of their anole until 2 years later they tell me, hey, it's doing great. I hatched my first baby, and it's a really cool thing to see. That's what it's all about. So I
Oh
just
yeah.
see everyone. At one point, I was that kid who
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what he was doing. So everyone starts somewhere. It's not always easy because sometimes people are annoying, but I always try to help people the best I can, and we're all doing it for the same reasons. So
That's cool,
Right.
man. I say it all
yeah,
the time, you know. The kid with the one lizard is just as important to this community as the guy with 500. You know,
yeah,
it's we all make this up. Oh, it's
yeah.
cool that you have that mentality. That's cool, dude. She says a lot about your character. That's awesome.
Thank you. Well, it's true. I mean, I literally was that kid that had a corn snake as my first snake. So it's like an albino
Don't
corn snake.
worry.
It's like everyone starts somewhere. So
Hmm?
it's
Yep.
it's cool to. And then a lot of the time, people that I never expected anything from them. They asked me a question and I helped.
Mm.
A few years later, they end up wanting to buy something, or I see them at a show again after I helped them. They brought something. They went and bought a green anole from a different table for $5, and they asked me how to set it up, and I told them, "Go get this, go get that, go get this." And a few years later, they come and want to buy, a $300 lizard for me. So it's you never know, even if it doesn't end up panning out to financially benefit, it's a benefit for everyone in the hobby. So just got to look at it that way.
Right. So you said you do importing. So what was the process of getting your import export license?
It's not even a process. You just go to US Fish and Wildlife and there's an application to get a import
Mm-hmm.
export license. You put your name, address, business name, blah blah blah, why you want to do it, and you apply. You pay $100 and that's it. And then
Damn.
usually it's been slow recently. Like you have to renew every year. And I did it a
Okay.
few weeks ago and I still haven't got it renewed yet, but it usually doesn't take that long. But now they're saying it takes like 60 days. But anyway, you'll get it. You'll either get approved or denied. If you get denied, they'll tell you why. And you can update your application if there's something to update, and you can get approved. The first time I applied, I got denied, but it was just a minor, like the address or something was wrong, and I redid it, and then a few
Okay.
weeks later I got approved. So, and then
Okay.
once you do that, all it takes is you have your license, which allows you to send stuff to and from out of the country, but then there's brokers that actually work with the fish and game agents at the ports, where you don't have to actually physically go do all the paperwork and talk to the agents and show them what's in the box and stuff. So
Okay.
that you just pay the broker a few extra, $100 to go do all that work for you. They already have a relationship with the agents and stuff. So it's really, honestly, quite simple.
Yeah. So where are you exporting from? Like what are your normals that you usually go and getting animals from?
So,
Like
well,
countries.
I have customers, for example, in Hong Kong or in Germany or whatever, who they'll buy a bunch of animals from other breeders, and then they'll all send them to me, and then I'll house them until all the animals come
Okay.
to me, and then we'll put them all in a big box, and then send them all at once to Otherwise, it costs a few $1,000s every time you send something. Versus if you're sending a box this big or 5 boxes this big, it's like almost the same price. So just get all the animals together once and then send them over.
Okay.
I have done a few like country of origin imports where I've imported wild caught animals. But whenever I'm doing that, I'm usually doing it for myself to get like new breeding stock. Like I've imported different types of micro geckos from the Caribbean, different types of anoles, stuff like that. I'm not like importing just to flip. I do sometimes bring stuff in to resell, but I never just sell it immediately once I get it, like most importers do. So, and I'm always doing it because I have an interest in it, and then I want other people to work with it as well. But the main thing I'm doing, that's maybe 20% of it. The main thing is exporting to other countries. I send my animals with the animals I'm exporting for other people, but I don't breed. They want hognose, they want garter snakes, they want bull snakes, they want bearded dragons. I don't have that stuff, so I'll help them find other people, or they'll find them themselves, and then the animals will come to me, and we'll send it all at once.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Is that because you have that exporting license that they're using you, or is it just because you're good? Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. Originally, I got it with the intention of exporting my own animals, but then it just kind of evolved into like exporting my animals and exporting other people's animals because.
Brilliant. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, juggling lots of different things at the same time. So,
all right. So I have my wrap up question. This is a question I ask at the end of all my stuff is, what have been your biggest failures so far in your reptile keeping and professional career, and what have you learned from them?
Failures have been, I don't know, because it's a two-way thing. Not having enough trust in other people to delegate, because I'm doing this all on my own. It would be a lot easier if I had some help. I could do a lot more probably. At the same time, I have trusted people to help, and it hasn't worked out. So it's like I'm still in the process of figuring out how to scale bigger than I am, just because I know there's a lot more I can do, but the daily tasks aren't always easy to delegate to someone else, especially when I know each and every lizard in here, even if they hatched yesterday, or if I hatched them 5-6 years ago. I know each and every one. I know what's going on. I know what they need. I know when they don't look good. I know when they need something. So it's like, that's my biggest failure, is being able to kind of let go and let other people help me, because I get pretty frustrated when something isn't going right with the animals, because they can't, like, sometimes I won't post on social media for a month or two because like I need to make sure I don't get around to it, because these are the priority, and then comes Instagram. So trying to figure out a way to better delegate that has definitely been a fail, because I'm working on making special caging for the micro geckos and anoles that I can sell to people. I'm working on making like packaged substrates and leaf litter and all that good like bioactive stuff, so I can set up my website, one-stop shop. This is the Anole kit. This is everything you need. But I haven't been able to fulfill that kind of dream I want to do, because I haven't been able to get away from just the animal care. So that's for sure, working on it, the failure I'm facing to this day.
All right, so I have one closeout question for you then. If you could talk to every child in the world that aspired to be you and do what you were doing, what advice would you give any kid that wants to do what you're doing? Anything.
I would say definitely don't do it because you think you're going to be rich. Don't do it because you think you're going to make the first ball python, world's first ball python morph, and sell it for 50 grand, because that is a recipe for disaster to think that way about reptiles. Because of course there's money to be made and there's ways to support yourself doing it, but at the end of the day, there's 90% of the days are cleaning and feeding and doing stuff you did not sign up to do. doing, stuff that isn't really fun. I mean, of course, it's fun to, it's cool that I get to do this podcast with this background with 100, cages. But there was, hours and days and months and years, honestly, of work that I didn't want to do that have led me to this point. Even now, there's work I have to do after this podcast that I don't want to do. So it's, you better be in it because, it's amazing. But it's also just like with any, passion or dream or job, it's not always what it seems. When it turns into more than a hobby, it's not always fun. So sometimes I do wish it could be a hobby again, but then I feel obligated sometimes to keep what I have going, because if I didn't do what I'm doing with these species now, they would, a lot of them fade away. That's also one of my biggest failures and regrets. A close second is some species I thought would be around. I gave them up because I'm like, oh, I can just get them again one day, and they're gone. Like, for example, Chinese water dragon, they're gone. They stopped being imported. They're $400 now, and it's like, I could have picked up 100 of them for $20 each, but that's one really cool species to see. That they became CITES too, and Vietnam doesn't issue CITES, so whatever's left in the U.S. that people are breeding. I mean, that lizard is one of the. It's like looks like a Godzilla. It's like one of the coolest bright green lizards ever. Treated like trash for 50 years, and now they're, who knows how many are left. No one took good care of them except a few people, and it's like now that's one species I really messed up and want to keep. But of course, you can't do everything. But just do it for the love. For example, that's a great example. Whoever kept them because they loved them when they were $20 is happy they kept them because now they're $500.
Right.
So it's like, keep what you love. Do it for the love, not for the money.
Yeah. I got one more thing for you, Armin. When are you gonna start YouTube again?
Oh my gosh, that's
I miss those. I like that species spotlight stuff that you were doing.
Yeah,
that was so.
I need to do all that. There's so many things I've been intentional and I've started it, and then it's like, just got to keep taking care of animals, and that always comes first. So it's another one of those things where I have to figure out how to delegate that, and I have hired people, and it's worked out, but not as well as I've hoped. So I think I just have to, at some point, let it be how it is, and get some more help. And yeah, I don't know. I definitely need to start YouTube again. I think about that just about every day.
Yeah. So. I love watching those species spotlights that you have. Just
thank you.
Learning about something that I've never even heard of. Like when you what was it, the mop head iguana?
Yeah.
Is that what it was? Yeah. Oh my god. Like, it's just a brown iguana, but it just looks so cool.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things I get hype over. Just seeing like stuff that nobody even heard of, and people start giving out information about it. It's like, okay, now my gears are starting to turn and everything like that. So definitely miss that stuff.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely thank you for that feedback. I'm definitely gonna try to work on it, especially because of you now.
Definitely a it would be a successful venture, I feel like, for you, dude. You have a knack for giving information to people, the way you can teach and spark an interest, simultaneously. I mean, you just have a very unique way of getting information out there. I mean, even in your shorts, on Instagram and stuff, I mean, it's like very unique, man. I could watch a clip and see something like, that's HerpTime, man. Like, it's very cool. Very, very cool.
Appreciate that.
All right, guys. Armin, where can everybody find you at?
Everyone can find me HerpTime, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. I'm everywhere. HerpTime.
Everybody.
All right. Appreciate your time, Armin. I know you're busy. I know I gotta.
Thank you for coming.
For sure.
Yeah. Of course, anytime. It was a cool conversation, and happy to talk about the hobby. It's always fun. So you guys are cool, and thanks again.
Love that, man. Honestly, we keep talking for hours. I didn't realize it was as long as it is. But back sometime.
I would love to talk about, if you want to ever come back on again, I would love to talk about those the Peruvian bush anoles.
Yeah.
Is that what yeah, oh my god. Those things are wicked. You said they're not really an anole species, right?
Right.
or are they
They're
like
in
very? Oh,
they're in a different genus, but they
okay,
honestly act more chameleon like. They're Polychris is
okay,
the genus, so they're
okay.
that's a really cool species too. There's so many cool,
Yeah,
unbelievable animals that no one knows about.
yeah,
So
yeah. I definitely would love to talk about those next time. If we could get you on, man.
for
That'd
sure.
be awesome.
All right. Well, have a great night, man. No, I
Thank
said
you.
we'll talk to you later. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you guys
Yeah, brother.
All right.
Appreciate
Thank you.
for sure.